He probably just like drags his feet a lot, so he's like constantly shuffling around and shocking
You're not just
people.
like shocking people from. That was really fun. He's like, you should try it. I was like, I'm good. Thanks.
All right, welcome to the Damaged Goods podcast. Oh my goodness, let's try that again. Welcome to the Damaged Goods podcast with your host Ill Vibe and Jess Robert. We are doing an early day podcast for once. Usually we record around 7 or 8 at night, and we're a little drunk and debaucherous. But now we're
Not
drinking
today.
coffee.
We're still
was it 1
debaucherous.
o'clock?
We can still be debaucherous.
It's 1:14 in the PM.
You can be a little debaucherous.
I'm mostly sober.
Thanks for listening. Do us a big favor and support us on whatever platform you listen on, whether that's Spotify or YouTube or whatever podcast app you use. Just like us, follow us, subscribe, whatever the thing is. Check us out on socials at Damaged Goods Pod, myself at for Jess Robert, and Illvibe at Illvibe. Our podcast is still blocked on Twitter.
Fuck you, Twitter.
Wait,
Fuck you,
time
Twitter.
out. I need to hear about that.
Yeah.
No, there's
Why?
no
First
story.
of all, you gotta get on the
really.
microphone. We got banned from Twitter. We don't know why. We're working on that part. But in
Yeah.
the meantime, it's fuck you, Twitter.
Yeah. So if you do want to follow us on socials, just follow us on Instagram and Facebook.
But Trump isn't like
And he's
banned
not-
on
no.
Twitter.
And as far as
But
we
you
know,
guys are.
he's not involved in our banning. Although that's unconfirmed at this point.
Just to give some context here, before we started recording, she's like, we're not going to talk about Trump, are we? And then like 2 seconds in, she brings
Yeah,
up
hey.
Trump.
Thing I say.
Now that
I'm
he's-
just thinking of someone
now that you brought him
I'm
up.
thinking of someone who should be banned on Twitter, not y'all.
Thanks as usual to lyricvids.com, the web's #1 lyric video animation company,
They're the best.
providing recording artists and bands with dope content since 2015. Today's guest is an amazing one. She's a talented songstress who Anthony got to work with in Nashville for the first time. And now we've met up with her again in New York City recently, and now in our hometown, Toronto. Please welcome Rebecca Moreland.
Hey.
Hey,
Yeah.
how are you guys doing today?
We're really good. Thanks for coming. How do we sum you up? Because when I first messaged you, so the way that Rebecca and I met was we were going on tour, which we talked about on this podcast, and we had some days off, and we're like, hey, look how close to Nashville we are. And so I'm like, it's only like a 2-hour drive. So we started just messaging people in Nashville that look like they'd be cool. Like, I'm just trying to.
So I looked like I was cool.
Yeah, like play like the psychic game of like, because you're trying to find someone who looks like they're really doing this and they're like a singer songwriter, and then but also you're trying to like look at the pictures and be like, but are they going to be mean to me if I message them? Because I'm like, because they happen sometimes. Someone message you like, I'm sorry, I'm way too famous for this bullshit ass message you just sent me. And you were so cool. And then we had this great co-write, and there was such chemistry with you and me and Meyer, and Skeevious Tips, who was also there. And then, yeah, by sheer coincidence, we bumped into you again in New York.
Yeah, crazy. And it's just
Well, it wasn't too much of a coincidence.
It sort of
stayed
is.
in touch.
Well, no, I just mean, the
The fact that we were both there at the same
bumped
time.
into wasn't the right word.
Yeah.
Planned to meet up with, but this is cool that you happen to be in New York.
Well,
when
I
we were there.
just moved. I moved up to that area. So, like for people who are listening, I'm a Texan, and then I moved to Tennessee for almost 9 years, and then I just moved up to the north.
So do you now, are you permanently based in New York right now?
Permanently goes with me. I have an apartment for a year. I have an apartment for a year there.
Okay. So a year
I'll be
in,
going back and forth.
A year
but
in New York. I like it.
And what area of New York?
It's technically New Jersey, but
Yeah.
it's cheaper.
Oh, snap.
It's so much cheaper. It's like 15 minutes from the city though. I can get like downtown.
Oh yeah, for sure. I went to New Jersey before I ever went to New York City, and we were in Hoboken.
That's exactly where.
Oh, okay. And you
that
could literally
area.
see the New York skyline from there, right?
You can actually see the view. Yeah, it's nice. It's cool. It's a change. I needed to change things up a little bit. So.
Yeah, for sure.
I love it. And from Nashville to New York, I imagine life's pretty different.
Quite a bit, yeah. Nashville's very small. It's even though it's growing, like I feel like you get kind of one-dimensional view. It's getting better with music. There's more pop stuff, right? But when I first got there was nothing other than country. I remember people looked at me like I was from outer space when I said I did something other than country. Like, why in the world did you move here? And it's grown a lot, but it's a small town feel. So you start to feel like, oh, I've been here 20 times before. I've done everything there is to do here, and I'm an adventure person at heart. So
Yeah.
I just felt like I needed to change for a little bit.
Totally. That's why places like New York City are great, because it's like we were there for a week and we were like, oh, we like barely even
Yeah.
touch like the tip of the iceberg, you know, or scratch the surface, whatever expression.
Yeah, my main takeaway from New York is like, oh, we have to go back now because now I have a taste for it. And there's like 10 things I really wanted to do that we didn't have a chance to do while we were there, professionally and just personally.
And I'm sure as a musician too, it's just like you're never going to run out of new people to meet there, new connections, because people are constantly moving there and moving in and out.
Hot take. New York's a big city.
Also, the only place I've ever been on Earth where I saw a man's penis full frontal in the street.
Oh my goodness.
Like I was just walking.
So the rumors are true.
I was just walking, you know, minding my own business, going to a show. This was probably 3 weeks ago. It's like 7:00 in the evening. It's not crazy late at night. And this guy's really loud on his cell phone. So I look over at him and he's just full frontal in the street with his
And he's
out.
on the phone like mad at someone else.
Phone, just like talking to someone else. Like, and
Not even a video chat. So he's you know, like he's naked and they don't even know.
I looked down and I was like, what is that flesh colored thing in his hand? Oh my gosh.
This is amazing.
Yeah. It was
the fact that he's on the phone makes that story so amazing.
Oh, it's way better.
Because I was like, who is he yelling at on the phone? And I was like, oh, all right, he's taking care of business while taking care of
Do you think maybe he was out in the street like being like a creep and then his mom called? Like she like interrupted the creepiness?
It's possible.
Who knows?
I just know that usually you're supposed to turn towards a wall when you do that.
What if he had outside nakedness scheduled and he was at home on hold with like it's like the bell, like AT&T or in Canada like Bell.
Yeah.
And then like an hour passes and you're like, at 4:00, I have to go be naked in the street. So he stays on the phone and just brings the on hold out to the street where he does the naked thing. And then eventually they pick up the phone and now he's fucking pissed.
Yeah.
Right. It was very shocking to me. I really couldn't even, you know, we don't get that in the South.
Yeah.
It's not a thing.
I find it even more hilarious too if he actually was just like peeing on a wall or something and then got a phone call and forgot that he had his dick in his hand. That's just like
that's a great
that could actually be what happened.
I mean,
no, if he's in the middle of the street naked, what's likely is he was calling the person and jerking off and being a real weirdo. I think that's what it was.
I don't know what was happening. I didn't look for very long. However,
drugs is what happened.
Most likely there was drugs are
Sorry,
I got us on a bunny trail.
No, that's okay. Have you ever seen anyone naked in the street?
No, let me tell you about the most traumatizing thing I've ever seen. Although I guess it does include some nakedness, but the nudity wasn't the problem.
Oh.
So when I was walking down Bathurst here in Toronto, if you don't know the street, it's a really busy street if you're from anywhere else and you happen to be. So it's a very, very busy street. And then I arrive at Queen Street, an even busier street, one of our busiest streets. So even though you're used to seeing some homeless people in the area. I think there's a shelter nearby. So you're used to some of that element of the city. And like, I've lived here for a long time. So that doesn't shock me. Like I feel sad a little bit, of course, whenever you're around it, but I'm used to it to a degree. But then I come around the corner and this is like a bank, you know, and there's a woman bent over at like 90 degrees.
Whoa.
And she's peeing or pooping. I think peeing. Yeah, peeing. But the pee is going like straight, like a garden hose, like so much pressure. It's like splashing.
Oh my god!
And it almost looked like a bad joke from an old Adam Sandler movie where she was like bent over, peeing with like such ferocity.
Did you want to stop and kind of ask her?
No, but I fully did one of these, like whoa! Like,
you had to dodge the pee.
You had to dodge it?
and she's just like giving it.
Oh my god!
Like right at the edge of the building.
Oh my gosh.
And of course the pee doesn't last that long. So I think by the time I kind of went around, she was done.
Yeah.
But it was just like, I couldn't believe it.
But that was a good reaction. Like you must have good reaction. Like that's
I have a great reaction time. I have a reaction time with someone who smokes way less weed than I do, for sure.
I mean, I don't know if I would have known to dodge that.
Like I drop a spatula and I won't even look. I'll just catch it. That happens all the time.
I feel like you can say if it's true.
How many times have I looked over and been like, babe, my reaction time on there?
But he's also clumsy as fuck. Yeah. So he literally
stubbed my toe constantly.
Like I'm not even sympathetic anymore. I get mad. He'll be like, oh, fuck it. I'm like, babe.
Yeah, no,
like that's the fourth time you've stubbed your toe today. Like
it's because what happens is I'm walking around and I'm making all this money and then I'm not looking where I'm going because I'm just too busy doing the math.
For those who aren't watching, like on the video, she's rolling her eyes right now.
She's also rolling in money.
Oh my god!
Nice. So, any travel plans on where you want to go next, or?
Oh, well, my biggest next thing I'm doing is buying furniture because right now I have no furniture in my new apartment.
So you're kind of settling right now.
I'm gonna nest for about probably 3 weeks a month.
Nesting's fun. That's as an adult, I really enjoy a good nest.
And I haven't. So I started really, really heavily traveling probably in the last 2 years. And honestly, for a better part of last year, I think I was gone from my home 7 months out of the year.
Crazy.
Which was really great because I have a home in Nashville and I started Airbnb-ing it.
Oh, lovely.
So shout out to Airbnb.
Yeah.
So that gave me the freedom, the flexibility to kind of do my own thing, which is really, really fun. I went to Europe. I went to Italy, London, went to New York for a few months last year. But then I realized this is great. I just don't want to be a hobo forever.
Yeah,
so,
for sure.
So
you definitely feel a little bit disoriented when you feel like you don't have that home base.
That
right?
home base, yeah. And people always tell me, they're like, oh, your life is really cool and adventurous, and it is, and I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way. But I'm really looking forward to sitting down and having furniture and an apartment.
Yeah,
totally.
No, that stuff, it provides a good, and even when you're on the road, I feel like knowing that you have that makes it all a little easier.
Totally.
You're a little less dizzy because you're I'm just away from my really sweet home base. I can go land in when I need to.
And I can
everything's ready for me.
Yeah.
We're going to move to LA for 6 months of the year. At least that's what we're planning on doing. And we had talked about it originally before we decided we were going to get a house in Toronto. We were maybe we'll just go and put our stuff in storage. It's no, we can't put our stuff in storage. It's you would just be you would be homeless.
In my early 20s, I did that, and it was cost effective AF. It was definitely worth it. I just gave away my bed, and I put most of my valuable stuff in a storage unit that was $80 a month. And that's great when you're 23. It was just, and I recommend if you're young and you're out of school and you want to do something crazy,
do it.
Put all your stuff in storage, pay $80 a month, and go travel Europe.
I would never take that experience away. It's just you can't do that
I'm ready. I'm ready to have a spot. So for us, we're gonna buy a house before we decide to live in LA, so that we have 1.5 places, not
and then we'll probably Airbnb ours.
Is great. I really have to say, but right now my dog has a better bed than me. She's got her little princess dog bed, and then I have a little pallet. So I left all my furniture in the Nashville house because of the Airbnb, right? So I have stuff there. I just didn't move any of it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So I just ordered a bed on Amazon. You can order anything on Amazon.
You really can.
My gosh.
Brought to you by the bots that are taking us down.
These microphones are from Amazon.
The only thing you can't order on Amazon is I don't know. Is there anything?
Wow.
Meat. You can't order.
Happiness.
I bet you there is
Fulfillment.
because there's definitely salmon. Just full salmon, live salmon. Maybe. I think you could probably order the food salmon.
I mean, you can't order.
There's probably a band named salmon that you could order on Amazon.
You can't order a boyfriend on Amazon.
That's true.
Maybe someday.
True love not available. Not yet available.
Self-fulfillment.
For context, we mentioned that I met you in Nashville. You are a singer, songwriter, artist. How do you describe yourself?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm songwriter first and foremost. Cool. I feel like I started writing songs when I was 8 years old. I've written for a very long time, and I originally did because I was a really weird kid and I felt like I didn't fit in anywhere. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to write songs. I spent a lot of time alone in my room. Yeah, I was just a very, artistic child, I guess you could say. So I wanted to write songs that made people feel less alone. Because I felt like I experienced a lot of things that people didn't understand. And I wanted to write songs that made people feel like someone said, oh my gosh, I understand you. I get you. It makes sense. So that's always been kind of my thing since I was a little kid. I wanted to write music that connects people to each other. Not to sound, cheesy or corny. That's really what I want to do. And so first and foremost, songwriter. And then I get my joy is singing. I love to sing. So I feel like they're kind of, hand in hand, but
sure,
that's how I would describe myself. And eventually, as time goes on, I think there's pockets of time where you do more of one, more of the other.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that with all of my friends too. So I kind of go back and forth. It's the yin and the yang of the music.
I agree. And if people wanted to see you live, what's your performance like in a year? Do you play when you're in New York? Are you playing gigs?
Yeah, I play really, really regularly in New York and other places too. But I have a band in New York.
Cool. I was just about to say, do you play with a band? Yeah.
Yeah, like the week right before you guys came, we played 4 shows in a week. It was really great. We played 4th of July, 5th, 7th. So we play a lot, but unfortunately my band is also a really successful other band. Yeah. So they're going on tour.
I met a lot of singers where their band is a pretty successful other band.
Right. So it's like, they're all in the band together. So I don't know if any listeners have heard of The Reign of Kindo, but they're an amazing band, but they're all, they're blowing up right now.
Cool.
And so they're like, well, you know, we're going to be on tour for the next month and a half plus. So, so yeah, sometimes
you're playing some solo gigs for a month and a half.
Solo stuff.
But that's fun.
But that's what I've learned as an artist. Again, like, I think if I could say anything, it's accepting and embracing kind of the ebb and the flow of like, ideal scenario, you work with the same people all the time and everything just stays consistent. But that's just really not how it goes, right? Like, that's not how business goes. That's not how anything works. You know, you have to kind of play with the cards you're given in the moment and build and build and build. That's how you truly build something big, I think, is kind of,
that's very smart.
You're strategic, but you're also like, okay, well, you know, what's next in this area? What's next in this area? And you go with people who kind of like share your passions, but are also available. And
I think one of the, laws of like the world in business in particular is you talk about the difference between a big business and a small business. You know, big business has the power of leverage and money, and they've got all the things that obviously come with big business. But why do small businesses often win? And usually it's because they're able to respond in real time to what's happening in the world around them. And, there's this there's more of an interest in, there's like this yoga trend or whatever. It's like we can respond in real time, and by next Tuesday have a response to that. And it's a funny comparison, but that's just the thing that I remember learning in school, that my whole life, it's just been a thing I know, that it's like whenever I worked with a big business, it's like, well, we can't do that. And they move like a big giant from like an old Disney movie.
There's like 20 people who have to approve it.
And even us suggesting that to my boss is risky. I don't. But at a small company, when I worked at a small agency or something, it's just like you bring it up with the guy who owns the spot at lunch, and he goes, "Fuck, that's a good idea."
By tomorrow, you're already doing it.
You know what I mean? And I think when you're an independent artist, you are the ultimate small business. So your strength is that ability to be like, this podcast is about comedy and music and philosophy and our life and documenting. But as things change, if your comedy career starts exploding, this podcast will be more and more about comedy because we're responding to real life stimuli. Like that's an opportunity. Let's follow that opportunity and see where that leads us.
From, like, you and I were talking yesterday. We have like an acting background, and I think a lot of that, comes from when you're in.
Jess mostly did adult films.
Well, we didn't talk about that. Hello. What does that mean? I'm just kidding.
Porno.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, like you kind of have to like react in the moment. And I think that's a big thing, but it's also hard as an artist. Like, when do I react in the moment to the opportunities that are in front of me? And when do I know how to say no? Like it's a balance. You have to know, it's a lot of it is instinct. I feel like you just kind of have to go with what your gut tells you.
Yeah, for sure.
We're good at that part. That part. Do you have anything you want to talk about today?
We didn't really get to talk about New York City. Last time we talked a little bit about my comedy there, but we didn't really talk about what we did while we were in New York. So, so we went. Well, I'm going to talk about other comedy stuff that we went to. We went to Roast Battle, which was really fun while we were there. What was your highlight of that?
Was that the night that we met Matt?
That's correct.
So
that is funny.
Yeah, we went to New York Comedy Club. I mean, we're huge comedy fans, like our favorite thing in the world. So I went to an iconic comedy club, New York Comedy Club, see Roast Battle. Roast Battles where two comedians say horrible things about each other that is like
nice,
hard to swallow, that this person just said that about this person's dead mom. It is tough, but like also really funny because they both signed up for it and they're professional joke writers. So it's a blast, but it's dark at times, and it was really funny. But there's an opening, I guess opening is the right word, act for the show. A guy named, I guess Matt Was Funny is his social. I can't remember what his real last name was.
He was opening, but then he was also.
But he was also one of the judges, and clearly
like his full phrase was Matt Is Funny.
I think at his like social handles like Matt Was Funny.
Matt Was Funny.
Or Matt Was Funny.
I think Matt Was Funny.
That's cute.
In any case, you're listening on the internet. That's the easiest way to find him, and he was. I put him on my list, like, of one of the funniest comics I've ever seen. And immediately, like, in the crowd, like, low-key under the table, like, added him on Instagram and Twitter. Because I was just like, I go see 100 comedy shows, not 100 a year, probably 50 comedy shows a year. And this guy is like really notably funny as fuck.
Hilarious.
And so I was just like, for sure, future superstar. Just like our friend Mike Carosa, when we met him, who's been on this podcast, we were like instantly like, this guy's going to be so famous one day. We would love to meet this guy one day. And then now we're friends with Mike Carosa. Mm-hmm. And then so Matt became, in my mind, I'm like, I'm getting the same feeling of like, this guy's a legendary comic. I never heard of him before. I don't think he's like famous on TV yet. But after the show, we go say what up, start chatting. He's like, you guys want to go do shots? I was like, fuck yeah, let's go do shots with our new favorite comedian. You know what I mean? And then here's the thing, though. I don't do shots.
Yes, we've talked about this in the podcast before.
I have not done shots since like 2015.
Yeah.
Wait, is this before or after your thing? Is this like a day after?
This is earlier in the week.
Before,
earlier in the week.
Okay.
So I do a shot. I only did one, and truthfully, drunk wise, I was fine. I was lit. I was feeling myself. It was a whole thing, but I was fine. The next day I was fucked. I had the worst hangover.
How many shots did you take?
One.
Oh.
This one, it just really
Just
like,
one?
It just fucked with me, man.
That's all it
Just
takes.
hangover wise, like drink wise, I was fine. Hangover wise, I felt so sick. But it was a really, really fun night, and have a memory of like seeing somebody, instantly becoming a fan of them, and then like a half hour later, you're like kicking it with them and doing shot.
and
Was
then
really cool.
they gave us free passes at the end of the night.
Yeah, they did.
Ooh,
Good memory.
So to the same venue.
no,
So
basically,
basically,
come
it
back
was
to the
like,
club,
I thought you were
yeah.
gonna say like to Six Flags or something.
I mean, I don't know why they do that, but that'd be awesome.
I like that idea though.
So yeah, they gave us free passes to come back to the same comedy club, and we did that
we did.
few nights. I think it was our last night that we were there. We went back and saw Ari Shafir and who's the other guy?
Andrew Schultz.
Did you guys go to Second City at all?
We did not.
No, not Second City.
Is Second
This
City
was,
Chicago? I think Second City is
everywhere.
I mean, it's
Well,
everywhere,
Second
but
City,
I think
yeah.
Chicago is like the Second City spot. And the only reason I say that is we go to Chicago once in a blue moon.
Yeah.
We should
You'll go,
go to Second City in Chicago where it's like
Me and my friends took like an
birthplace.
improv class there.
Oh, that's
you can
fun.
Take, little.
Yeah. We
with the
have a Second
Toronto
City here in
one.
Toronto too.
Oh yeah. I was terrible at improv.
I think we're like the sixth or seventh city, but no, anyone?
The 6th or 7th
City.
city that's
Because it's Second City. Anyways, it was a bad joke, but I was just, I don't know.
Keep talking about New York.
So we also went to Central Park. This is our first time in New York City, by
Yeah.
the way. So me and Anthony were really enjoying having a little bit of a touristy experience.
Yeah.
Of course, our type of touristy.
But we rocked it, right? Because we did Central Park with a Super 8 camera, like from 1983 or something, 1986. I can't remember.
No, I think it was like earlier than that. I think it was 70s.
Might be 76. Anyways, old ass camera, who's like it's like a gun that you go. It is the craziest little camera. So we shot a bunch of footage walking around Times Square together and all the buildings and drinking in Central Park.
We saw a squirrel fall out of a tree directly onto a girl in Central Park.
And then we saw that girl
haven't-
poop her pants.
Yeah.
You haven't been to Central Park until you've seen it.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it was a proper Central Park experience.
It was amazing.
He gave her the middle finger and then like scurried away, hopped in his Uber, and then
Did you also see like random, homeless people picking out of the trash in Central Park?
no. I mean, we saw some homeless people there, but we've been to San Francisco, so you can't scare us with homeless people anymore.
Yeah.
Also, Toronto.
But San Francisco, though.
Like Central Park. I've always wanted to do the little horse carriage thing. I never have.
So when it's a little bit cruel, and when
In the summertime anyways.
in the summertime, not to be like preachy or whatever, but in the it was so
Here
hot
she
out.
goes again.
And
on the horses. It's hard.
yeah, and just like
Yeah,
the
'cause it's like
carriages are
40
really heavy and stuff, and like
Those bitches.
I'm totally pro horseback riding. I love horseback riding, like riding one by
Especially in the
itself. But I find the
bedroom.
carriages are kind of like cruel. I would rather go on
actually
like a
Never thought about it that way.
Especially in the humidity. In the
Yeah.
humidity, it's almost like they should just be having water and shade.
yeah.
And then
Yeah,
good
even
for
when
them.
it's not humid though, I'm sure they're overworked, right? Like I'm sure they have them out longer than they should have them out
for
just because
sure.
they need to make more money, right? They're like cab drivers but with horses.
so there should
you
be
know?
so there
They
should
don't
be
get tipped,
there should be regulations in terms of hours.
Yeah.
But in
And
the,
I mean,
in
I
the
don't know
heat,
much
it almost
about
doesn't
it,
matter because
so-
that heat, we were walking around, we hard to breathe.
Yeah,
But it
for
was
sure.
really hot when you guys were
It
there.
was crazy.
I mean, like hotter than Texas.
And then we came back here and it was humid, but finally before you came, the humidity broke. We got a break. But for a minute, it was like tough to breathe outside. And
Yeah.
we take Hallie out and she immediately starts panting. So yeah, for those horses, it's not a fun run on those.
Did you see ducks?
temperatures.
Were there ducks in
There were
Central
ducks.
Park?
I always said ducks.
Was there?
I saw ducks.
I love how you're saying that so definitely. I don't
Like, there
remember
were
seeing that.
definitely ducks.
I saw ducks.
I've said that. I was trying to Google where like the Home Alone like bridge is with like the pigeon lady.
Yes, the pigeon lady.
But Central Park is so big that we
Yeah.
didn't end up being anywhere near it. But that's okay. Next
You know
time.
what's funny is that like I was there for 4 months last year, and I've been there almost 2 months now, and I haven't been to Central Park that whole time. I love it.
Oh, yeah.
It's just that I'm never up that way.
Yeah, we're big like take a roadie and like drink in the park. People have our little speaker, play some music. Yeah,
That's our general vibe. We do that a
should have
lot.
done that this week while you were here. When are you leaving?
Oh, right after this
now.
podcast. But no,
I'll just have to come back because I want to go to the
we
beach.
we made
Yes, we
we
go to
made
the
2.5 hit
beach.
songs while she was here.
Yes.
Yes.
And so I
Very
imagine you'll
productive
come back
week.
at some point.
Yeah.
We will.
And we will do this again.
Yeah, for sure.
We also have Trinity Bellwoods Park here in Toronto, which is a big park, not nearly as big as Central
But
Park.
it's kind of a similar vibe.
Yeah, and everybody always just brings blankets and
I love
acoustic guitar
that.
players and little drumming circles and all that stuff. So it's lots of
I'm all
fun.
about that.
Yeah. We had no AC in New York City,
Wait,
so
what?
it was.
Stop. Why?
Wait, so
No way.
we had AAC.
We had an air conditioner that was simply not built for the size of
Entire
the apartment.
unit.
Yeah.
And they are, Tynan and Maya were very nice to
So
give us
generous.
the room with that little air conditioner.
Oh, it was in their apartment. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, but at the reason I'm saying this
And then
is
they
because
slept
at
in the room
end
without
of
the AC,
trip,
unfortunately.
Yes, they slept in a room with
That's
just a fan
friendship
blowing
right
on
there.
them.
That is
Yeah.
friendship.
The best. I really appreciate them. And on the last day we were there, on the day that we hung out with you, on our way home, Tynan all of a sudden sees an air conditioner by the side of the road, and he's like, "Well, I'm taking this." He's like, "I don't know if it's going to work or not, but I might as well try it."
It wasn't broken. It was just.
Well,
it
it
looked-
looked sitting
it looked
there,
cracked or something.
And he was like, "Worst case scenario, I just put it back to the side of the road,
Yeah.
right?" So he brings it, plugs it in
It worked fine.
beautifully, and it was like a big, heavy
You know
duty
how there's
one.
two sides that come out?
Yeah.
One side was broken, but he just put it to the side and put the other one out.
Yeah.
And then that was
Yeah.
fine.
No, air wise, it was like phenomenal.
Yeah, and
So-
then by the next morning, literally when we headed to the airport, the entire apartment temperature had come up.
God.
Yeah.
And it was like good karma, honestly. It felt
Yeah.
like a moment at the end of like some Saved by the Bell episode.
Yeah, totally. And the only reason I mention all this, I'm sure for people who haven't lived or weren't living in either the Toronto area or the New York City area are like, this is boring. They're talking about weather, but it was like record breaking hot.
The power
like-
just went out in New York because of
Yeah, it's just like
temperature.
power's going out, people are melting. It was
bad. Sorry, I keep not talking into my mic.
Yeah, so that was pretty much our New Year. Oh, one more thing I wanted to mention
Yeah.
is when we were there, I have friends who lived there. They've lived there for a bit who I forgot to tell we were coming in advance. So unfortunately, we didn't get to hang out with them. But they were like, "Hey, you know what? They're like, where are you? What area are you guys in?" And we're like, "What was the area we're staying in? Astoria."
Yeah, Astoria, Queens.
And
I
they
know
were
where you're
like,
going with
"Hey,
this.
you're right near the theater of the moving image."
Museum.
Or museum
Wait, what
of
is
the
it?
moving image. It's a museum, and so we looked it up, and we're like, oh, it's like a museum like based on like film stuff, so like behind the scenes of like how they made this movie and like things like that. So we're like, that sounds cool. So we go, and it was so much more. Than we were
It changed
expecting.
my life.
Well, can you tell me? I'm on the edge of my
Yes.
seat.
You have to go. I'll only tell you if you promise to go.
Okay, I promise.
Okay, I believe it's free on Fridays. We went on a Friday afternoon. It blew my mind. So what it is it's a museum dedicated to TV and motion picture history, etc.
Oh, that's cool.
And then you go in, and then there's like some famous masks and wigs from like iconic movies, like the wig from Cleopatra is there, and like iconic. I mean, like iconic.
For me as a
iconic.
makeup artist, it was cool too because they had the original casts that they did on actors. So it's like the
cool,
cement
cool.
cast that they
Yeah.
made from their face so that they could then like build the prosthetics
Yeah.
on and stuff. So that was really cool to see.
There's original scripts from Seinfeld and like notebooks from
No
Larry David's
way.
notebook where he's writing down the idea, and
love
then
that
next to
kind of
that is the
stuff.
script, and then next to that is the scene from the show, and it's just like really badass.
Like the house plan or whatever it would be. Like there was drawings of like the sets before they were built and things like that.
Yeah, and then so moving up in levels of amazing. The next thing we saw was the movie The Exorcist. You know, there's like
Oh, yeah.
the girl with the head that spins around. Well, that's an animatronic style doll,
Yeah.
and it's there at this museum.
No
like the actual
way.
girl who like pops up and her head spins around is there, and it's like
So cool.
I was too young to watch Exorcist, so I watched it later in my life. I mean, like I
because
wasn't
I'm too scared of scary
I wasn't
movies.
there when it came out, but it's like iconic piece of history, and there's a few other things of that level from like Taxi Driver Robert De Niro and these like
Oh, yeah.
iconic things. So then we go up to the next floor, And that's when our lives change.
That's when you catapulted into space.
Yes.
And time traveled.
So let me tell you what we see. We come around the corner on the next floor.
Okay.
First thing you see is Muppets.
No.
Yeah.
Really?
The Muppets.
Like the actual Muppets?
The actual Muppets.
I didn't know there was a place on Earth.
All
you
of
could
them.
actually go.
And they're there and they're standing and it says what year this, because obviously there's been generations of it. So they've got like the Swedish Chef from 1986 and they've got
like vintage. They have like the vintage years.
It's because it's on like donation from like a billionaire's personal collection. So these are the.
So it's like fine wine, but the Muppet.
It's the Muppets.
Exactly.
Kermit, Miss Piggy in her wedding dress, like all of the what are they? I can't remember what they're
Miss
called.
Piggy in her wedding dress?
Yeah, whoa. It's like they have all of it. Do you remember the ones that were like underground and they're like there's another name for them?
No,
Underground.
There's a second group of Muppets. They had all of those as well.
You talking about the Ninja Turtles?
No. It was like a spin-off. It was a spin-off Muppet
Fraggle
thing.
Rock, dude.
Yeah, Fraggle Rock. That's what I mean.
They're underground?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a whole Fraggle Rock underground thing that happens on that show. But in any case,
Watch it again.
yeah, memorize that before you have the next episode.
I don't think I've ever seen an episode of Fraggle Rock.
I don't think I have
They had all of
either.
it. And then you turn the corner again. I see Big Bird.
No, stop right now. Stop.
Yeah.
Was he moving or is he?
No, it's just because it's the suit that the guy wore. So
I was
it's
hoping that maybe they had like
it's behind a
staff member
case.
that
No,
was, like,
I took a
still-
picture.
I think they try to preserve them, right? So
Right?
Cookie
They're old.
Monster.
How old is this Big Bird?
Oh, it was like 1991 or something.
I mean, who wasn't personally moved by Big Bird as a kid?
They had the original drawings from when they like drew up what a Big Bird might look like. Like
So,
the original drawings from
what
like
do you think
19
the conversation
whatever.
is like when you're sitting in a creative room and you're like, we should have this person that wears a big bird.
Well, if that person is Jim Henson, people aren't that surprised. This is what James does.
So what I'm thinking, guys, is like this really big bird suit. That's
Like, well, you really nailed it on that Oscar the Grouch thing, and people fuck with Cookie Monster pretty tough. So we're gonna go. Let's see what happens.
Gosh, I feel like that was way better than Barney, though, right? Better than Barney.
Of course it was.
Barney can't
Jim
even.
Henson didn't make Barney.
I know. That's what I'm saying. You can't like hold a candle to
No.
Sesame Street versus.
But there are
Barney.
great. No, there are great new whatever you call Jim Henson, like a puppeteer. There are great new people who do that stuff. But I would not say Barney is a good example.
No,
of
it's
that.
terrible.
I'm also not anti-Barney.
My mom wouldn't let us watch Barney as a kid because she hated the singing because she's a musician too. Like my family's all musicians.
Oh, and so it was driving her crazy.
She was driving her crazy. So we
fair.
weren't allowed to have toys that made sound in the house. Or I know this paints a
Let's
bad
talk
picture.
about this. I had all this stuff, but you know what?
Or we were
I think it's actually kind of a great rule, to be honest. I remember anything we had that made noise in the house, my dad was a problem with. My dad would just like press it over and over again.
Yes.
So not the
different than
children.
most people.
We couldn't like any banging on anything, any like she'd stop. Like we would get in trouble. It was fine. But yeah, it was a rough childhood. That was the worst that happened. But yeah, she's a
And now you're a musician.
Now I'm a musician.
So you went the opposite from.
yeah, we were never allowed. She's like, the only instrument you can't play is drums because I can't take it in my house.
Sure, yeah,
She's
yeah.
like, if you want to play drums in the garage, you can, but that's it.
Did you ever play drums or no?
No. That'd be cool if I
You play guitar?
play guitar.
Play piano?
A little bit, yeah. I used to more than not. I actually took like 10, 12 years of classical piano, but it never, like, I don't know, it was never my thing, my huge thing. And
Are you really good at guitar?
I'm a really good rhythm player. I can't do like,
yeah,
like
sure,
that kind of
sure.
stuff. But yeah, really, I can hold my own on a guitar.
That's
and I'm
fun.
getting back into like, I really like to get back into synth stuff and doing more, keys stuff here and there, especially as I move more towards pop.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah, there's so much you can do on a keyboard.
you write differently too.
Yeah,
you
totally.
write differently when you're like writing with the keyboard versus writing with guitar. Guitar, everything kind of starts to have that same like feel.
It's so funny we're swapping because I've never written to guitar in my life.
Really?
But until recently, now I have two of my favorite songs I've ever written are to guitar, and they'll be for my like 2020 release.
Oh, that's
and it's so, you're right. It's just immediately so different. And I'm baby steps. I took my
feel.
first 2 steps into writing to, because it's just the rhythm of the song is different, and like the vibe of
Vibe's
it, and how I would
different.
even want to sing on it is totally different.
Yeah. But that's why I like collaborating so much
Yeah.
because you walk away with like there's like, especially when you collaborate, like you and I and the guys and stuff this past couple days, like we all bring something completely different to the table.
Jess was there.
Jess wrote with us yesterday. She wrote the hook of the song. It was
left her out of it. Like there was no women involved.
What was our hook on that song? That was a good one. Does that sound good to you? Yeah. That was a cute song. It was really good. Very cute. Love it.
Have you tried the Beyond Meat stuff? Do you eat meat?
Hard pivot.
That's a hard pivot. I was like looking at you like,
yeah, no, I was just trying to find something else funny to talk about.
How do we?
It's just on my list of things to talk about.
No, it's beyond. It's beyond me. Like I don't.
Have you? So first of all, do you eat meat?
Yes, I do. I do. I also eat a lot of vegetables. I feel like I'm fair across the board.
You balance it.
Yeah, I'm well balanced.
Jess, what do you think about the Beyond Meat stuff?
I like it. I've only tried the A&W one. I don't know if are they all the same? Or?
Yeah, I think if it's called Beyond Meat, that comes from.
But they could have different ingredients, though, right? It's just they have. If
it's called Beyond Meat, though, that's like a brand.
Okay,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. So
there's some other stuff like the Impossible Burger might not be Beyond Meat, for example. That might be their own thing.
Oh, so which one's the A&W one? I think it's Beyond.
I think that's the Impossible Burger.
Oh, is the Impossible? So maybe I haven't had Beyond Meat then.
So Beyond Meat, I think, is the company that's doing the meat supplement across the board to consumers. So there's like a bunch of this stuff. It's like it's supposed to taste exactly like it's supposed to taste exactly like ground beef. So you can have like a hamburger,
but it's not.
But it's made of beans.
So do you feel like did it taste like it was?
The A&W one, yeah, it tasted great. It even had this is gross, but it had like a bloodiness to it. It felt like it was like juicy and
Because usually when you get like a veggie burger, it's just like this.
It's dry. Yeah.
Could you tell them apart? Do you think if you had them back to back, you'd be able to tell them apart?
I don't know. I couldn't really speak to that.
But I guess what I'm asking is. Does it taste enough like it that you think you could be tricked, or is it pretty far away, pretty far off that you're like, well, no, you couldn't trick me. It's just close.
No, I think you could trick me because I don't eat beef. Sure. But if I was a person who ate both or whatever, if you served it to me, I might just think you seasoned it differently. I think you could convince me it was beef for sure.
So wait, are you a complete vegetarian now?
No, I eat chicken and fish. I just don't eat beef and pork.
Yeah, I try to at least eat organically sourced and free range and more like ethically.
Yeah, totally.
It just there's a lot of crap out there and it's just not always great for you. So try to be mindful of that, but I have not tried that.
Truth. Did you bring that up for a reason?
Yeah, no, I did. It's just been in the news a bunch lately because Beyond Meat, I guess, companies is like exploding right now. It's like came out of nowhere and it's now this like multi-billion-dollar company because it's a huge trend in it's a real possibility for people to replace red meat who have health issues and
does it have a lot of soy in it though?
I don't know. But what I do know is this. There's a bunch of concerns about if it is in fact healthier.
That's what I was going to say. Because sometimes that stuff can actually...
The stuff that's been being brought up that I've read about is that it's super processed. For them to get it even close to tasting like meat, essentially it has to be like super over processed.
Right.
So the Canadian health minister or whatever said something like the science is out on if it's actually better. And then really their CEO is like, well, obviously it's well documented that red meat's horrible for you. And it's, if you look at all the science here, then there's simply no denying that if you replace that you're better off.
But not if you're replacing it with like a bunch of fake ingredients.
That's the concern is that, and so then Chipotle CEO conveniently timed, like while this debate's already happening, announces that Beyond Meat is too processed to match because they have a 51 ingredient policy. Like it has to be within these 51 natural ingredients. And he's like, their food simply is too processed.
There's more than 51 ingredients.
It's too processed to be included in our thing. And then the CEO of the company replies to him, you can go to any of our facilities at any time and just knock on the door and ask to see how our stuff is made, and we'll show you because it is so clean and transparent. We have nothing to hide. Go to any of Chipotle's food source places, and I bet you they don't let you to see things. And it was just like they're really going to war because it's
so it's like an all-out battle.
Because it's the possibility. Because even like there's people like me hanging in the balance, going, I'm on the fence because I'm a bit of a picky eater, and I cut red meat out a long time ago, and then I started having it occasionally as a cheat once in a while. Like I had a burger, but then I won't eat it again for weeks at a time. I'm trying for my own health, for the most part, to not eat
better,
too much
it's
processed red meat.
Yeah.
I've been having stomach issues, and this has been a huge help cutting that red meat out. So it's been great for me. But if there's suddenly a solution that tastes just as good without any of the health implications and any of the environmental implications, I'm super interested. So I think there's like 3 billion of us watching to see where this goes. Is this an actual replacement for most of us, or is that?
I also think that even the Beyond Meat one, he's like, you shouldn't be eating that every day. You know what I mean? It would be for a
like
treat at a barbecue.
But if it's
you know what I
beans
mean?
and lentils and stuff, in theory, you could have it. You could give it to your kids every week and feel good about it.
Yeah, you're right. You should be able
in
to.
theory.
Yeah.
If it was natural ingredient, like complete natural ingredients. Yeah. I've been reading a lot about like soy lately, and so I work. I've worked kind of in the doctor space, some marketing stuff that I do on the side, and soy actually. They're finding more and more it's not necessarily a great replacement for things because it affects your estrogen levels, especially in men. It's not good because it can spike your estrogen levels. Things like soy attach to, not to get completely scientific, but they attach to your cells in such a way that it blocks. Basically, it overproduces estrogen in your body.
Oh, wow.
And that is the non-technical way of explaining it. So there's a lot of that stuff that like it was kind of presented
to us. That's why I'm such a man.
Yeah, because you don't do soy?
I don't mess with no soy.
Yeah, that's
His
like the
boy don't
first
mess with
question
no
I ask
soy.
people of like, it's hard.
On dates, do you eat soy?
Yeah, I'm like,
I want to know how emotional you're going to be.
The first time I go on a date, I have a few questions, and that's
Okay.
that's a fifth question.
Do you have a few questions to ask on dates?
I mean, low key, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What you got?
Do you? I don't know. I mean, you want me to say them?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they're not real questions. I try to,
Sure.
but I think having a job is important.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it makes sense.
And you can ask that casually. So what do you do? You know, you don't have to be like, you must have a job.
Right. And I'm all about,
better have a job.
See, here's my thing is like, I'm generally a pretty open-minded person,
Sure.
but I want to know, like, are you is there a warrant currently out for your arrest?
I mean, that's an important question. I don't think I've ever asked that on a date. Maybe I should.
But you should. I mean,
Has anyone ever said yes?
Based on my experiences, sometimes you have to ask these things. Apparently,
Hilarious.
No one's ever said yes to that, but they've said yes to some.
They just get up and like sprint away.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised if like what you end up not knowing if you don't ask.
That's really true.
Anthony had bad experiences with lying to girls about how much weed he smokes.
Yep.
So when we went on our first date, he was like done with that shit. So he's like, just so you know, I smoke a lot of weed. I used to say it was a little weed, but I'm not gonna lie, it's a lot. And I was like, okay.
And she's like, can we like?
I didn't say it
now?
that aggressively.
No, you didn't.
Can we like eat food now? That's fine with me.
Yeah, no. Oh, please.
I mean,
we were drinking in a little dive bar and sharing all the details.
I think that's an important thing, though.
Over-exaggeration for
you said something.
comedic reasons.
You said something really
Called
beautiful the other
self-defense.
night when we were talking.
I tend to do that.
Yeah, it was really cool. We were at the sing along campfire sing along thing, which for listeners just started this really neat thing where people take a guitar, they pass around like kind of a quieter bar, and it's like a sing along. People get to kind of karaoke in the bar, but
Yeah, like around the campfire vibes.
They even had like a TV with the campfire and like a fish tank going on. It was really cool. But we were sitting talking about relationships a little bit and with Meyer, and you said something really cool of like it's really important at like once you kind of reach a certain age to just like put yourself out there and say like this is who I am, and like is this going to be compatible? Is it not? And I think that's really the only way to go about it. And then you were saying how when you met Jess, it was like you guys both had cards on the table, and it was like you knew right away that you had the same kind of belief systems, and like it was just beautiful because you were honest. And I don't think
belief systems, but
well, I mean like no, I mean like on how to treat
But we
each
are
other.
compatible, yes.
I don't. Yeah, like how to treat each other. Like you can have and that's what I've learned is that you can have like differing views on things, but if you have the same belief system on how to treat each other in a relationship, I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah,
That's really cool.
I think it's really powerful. No, like, some people, and I hate it's a weird way to start saying something, but I'm getting to something less douchey. Some people are bad at even kind of knowing who they are. Like they don't know how to properly sum themselves up and know what their strengths and their weaknesses are, and like how to kind of audit themselves and get a good sense of kind of who they are. I know people who I think they're not great at that, but I think that's the first thing you need to do is get a sense of like who you are. Like, what do you need? If every girlfriend has ever told you you're really intense, then add that to your description.
You know what I mean? Tend to come across as a little intense.
Like there's different ways you go about it from the people that you've been in relationships with and your friends, and just some level of self-awareness. But then from there, you need to go into a romantic situation or a business situation, or even when I'm meeting with new potential music partners. Like I met with a publisher, and I'm like, I used to hide my little stutter and that I talk fast and get a little manic, and it's like, no, because then they're gonna think I'm weird later. But you know what I mean? Like that's a really good point. That's the wisdom of my 30s.
Yeah,
is
you can't hide it for that long.
Yeah,
be the guy,
just be who you
and
are.
Be your best version of you. So you don't go in there.
Right.
I don't smoke a joint right before a meeting because that's not the best version of me, and I'm not, and that's disrespectful. And but I make a joke. When we're talking about partying, I'll make a weed joke because it's like, especially in certain situations that I'm in now, I'm very rarely like in the job interview where it's like, it's not inappropriate to do so. And it gives a realistic sense of who I am. Well, and I'll talk about my podcast, and I'll talk about how I'm a guy with 1,000 projects, because that's a really good assessment of who I am, you know, and I'd rather you just know that, because then some people will be like, I fuck with his kind of like crazy man energy who wants.
Some people may not like it, and it's better. You're better. And like, I really never thought that I would get to that point, because I used to hear people say, oh, if people don't like XYZ, you're better off without them. But I'm really at this point, because you don't have time for everyone, right? So I'm really at this point now where I feel like I'm finally learning in the past couple of years, like it is better. Like if I am an intense person, and I'm like, you know, even I feel like as an artist, I have a lot of empathy and I feel things very deeply. And so I used to be like, well, if I show people that side of me, then, you know, they might not really want to like be part of my life. And I'm finally at the point like, you know what, that's okay, because there's going to be a lot of people, I have a lot of friends and stuff who love that part of me.
Yeah, totally.
And so it's like you free yourself up. And I was like, that's just something people say, but it's true. You free yourself up to have those people in your life that are like, you know what, she's weird, but I like it. Like, it's great. And then you don't have to walk around your own life feeling like you're a stranger in your own life. Like you're just yourself. And that's huge, you know. I think that a lot of people don't even get there, you know?
That's really cool. I'm listening to this podcast by a guy named Naval. He's like, this is like great thinker and like podcaster and economist. And now he's an investor, and like, he's kind of used a lot of his ideas to become just super wealthy. And from that, I think that's when you get to graduate into being a philanthropist and all these other levels of like successful, smart people. Right. But it's so interesting. He talks about there's different kinds of luck, and that from the outside, it's really easy to just assess it as like, well, that guy got lucky and that guy didn't. And it's like, well, what do you mean you got lucky? Like, you can dig a little bit deeper than that. In some cases, lucky means he did so many different things that one of them worked.
Right.
Like, and that looks like lucky.
Is it really
but if you look closer, every day he got up and tried something else until one of them worked. You know what I mean? And then there's a couple of other obvious ones, but the one I'd love to get to, because it's relative to what we're talking about, is the person who does their thing so authentically and so potently and so laser focused that you become a beacon for that thing, and that other people who are in a similar space, or let's use Jess for example. She's a podcaster, smart comedian. There's kind of a dirty edge to that, and like you're a feminist, but not like hyper feminine, and like these are the things that describe you. And you become this thing so potently that when someone starts looking for a comedian like that to put on something, it's like everyone's pointing at you, because you've been that so potent and so specifically for so long, and that will look like luck. But it's because you've been unapologetically you for so long that you've become this like, you know what I mean? Like lighthouse for that exact energy.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I also think it's like a matter of like putting yourself in the right places. And sometimes it still looks like luck.
Absolutely.
Because you were maybe plucked out of this group of people. Yeah. But it's like, if you were always like in that group, you know what I mean? Everywhere you go, it's like you're in that group of people to be plucked from. You might get plucked. And then that looks like luck, but it is also you being there all the time. Do you know what I mean?
Showing up and being there. You know, I had this really interesting conversation with a guy I was interviewing. So for my, like the other side of what I do, like I mentioned before, I'm a marketer and writer. So I do a lot of writing for a lot of clients. And a lot of what I do is very hand in hand with music. I help brands figure out what their story is and what their message is. And it's so fun for me to kind of sit across the table from business people who don't really think about this on a daily basis. And I'm like, what's your heart behind this? Let's talk about your heart. Let's talk about your like emotions behind this business, and let's draw your story out. So I was interviewing this guy, and he's in his 80s, and he was part of like these huge mergers that happened in Manhattan during the 70s and 80s. And like multi-millionaire guy. He's seen it all. And he was like, but Rebecca, like these people were, you know, heads of huge companies like IBM, and they were literally jumping off buildings because they felt like they lived in the body of someone else's life. Like it was their life. They had built it. They had like woken up every day. They had done the things to get to where they were at. They were making the millions, but they were never being authentic. They were never being themselves. They were just kind of doing the thing to get the money. And I think that our generation is really, really good about that. We may like, to other people, we may make stupid choices of like, okay, well, why did they go left field here and just drop this, and now they're following their passion and like making less money. But you know what, we're being ourselves. And I don't know that a lot of maybe previous generations, there were some, but a lot of people felt like they were trapped in someone else's skin.
Totally.
Like,
and that speaks a lot to the way that some older generations say that, like, oh, like you just want everything your way and you just want everything handed to you. And it's like, no, we're just more willing to be like, well, this is the way that I am, and this is how I would like the kind of work environment that I'd want to work in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you craft your life.
I'm kind of like,
I think we do it on our terms.
Yeah, we do stuff on our terms. So I can't even think of a great example, but I know that like a lot of older people like always think that it's like, oh, they're not willing to put in the work. But a lot of times what they're actually saying is they're not willing to conform. And you know what I mean? And it's like we tend to be a little bit more like, well, instead of being this weird business person that my dad was, I'm going to do business my way. You know what I mean?
Business used to be built like the military. You have to start at the bottom. You don't ask questions. You do the piece of the job that you're told, and you work your way up.
Yeah, you put in the work.
That's not how we do it anymore. Now, sometimes a guy in the mailroom invents a new technique of doing business and becomes vice president. Things have changed.
Right.
Or he opens his own company and goes out on, like, things have changed. It's fragmented. And what happens is old people and people from the former system see the fragments as scary and negative. And you understand why, because for them, it was always very controlled.
Right.
You knew who was next up, and you could kind of make sure you could vet those people and make sure that, you know, everything moved slow in business of old days and not too fast. Nobody's kids ever went hungry because no one ever lost their job. If you had to fuck up a lot of times for that to happen. Things have changed. You could lose your job just because you didn't recognize that the guy in the mailroom had a cool idea. He starts the competing business, but now you're bankrupt. That happens in 3 years. Things have changed.
They've shifted. And some, I mean, there's good and bad and all kinds of change, I feel like, but I think overall, I think hopefully we'll be healthier. I would like to think as adults, because we are saying like we're being us. And
I agree.
And I think maybe, like you said,
more of us are being more of us.
I find that we're more like adaptable too, speaking to what you just said too. It's that
in different ways,
because it's changing constantly, and because somebody could take your job in 2 seconds or build a competing company or whatever, we're shifting. So like you're moving all over the place doing different stuff. We're kind of doing different stuff all over the place. Whereas our parents like worked the same job for, not our parents, but you know what I mean?
Like
parents generally worked the same jobs until they died.
Yeah,
you know
permanence means something different to us. To our parents, that was like, you come home and be like, I got a job forever. And your wife is like, yes.
I got a job forever.
And then your wife would be like, let's celebrate. I'll call our parents and our neighbors and we'll celebrate. You got a job forever. And now it's like, I got a job forever. And Jess would be like, are you sure you want to work there forever? Wouldn't that not be your first response?
Totally.
I took a job forever.
I'd be like,
are you sure you want to work
really
there forever?
What makes you happy forever.
Like the things have changed.
When I was able to quit my day job at the costume store, which I loved, it was a great job and I got paid okay. You know what I mean? I had benefits. I was like scared to tell my mom. I think I didn't tell my mom until about 2 months after I had quit it, because I knew that she'd be like, well, what are you going to do now? And it's like, well, Mom, we're making money at this. Like we started our own business. Like I have no boss. I'm the boss and I make all the money. You know what I mean? Like
I make all of the money.
But she doesn't see it that way. She was just like, you know what I mean? Like there's no security. What about your benefits? And like, you know what I mean?
The crazy thing is there's not a lot of security in corporate America anymore either.
Exactly.
So it's like, you know, which one, and as a business owner too, it's like, it's a good trade-off. You can be your own boss. You can do your own thing. You can grow.
Yeah. And it does allow us to, like I said, be more flexible too. If something happens where we lose our business, it's like, well, we have the capacity to just shift and move to something else.
What I love is you're making your bad decisions for yourself. Like if you make a bad decision, it's your bad decision.
You're accountable. You feel it immediately.
Yeah. So like you're not, I mean, somewhat of life, all of life, you have to like kind of, it's a give and take. You can't control, everything. But it is nice to be a business owner because you're like, okay, if I make this shitty decision, like it's on me.
Yeah.
And it is a lot more responsibility, but at the same time, your life, like you're kind of saying this is where I'm growing. And if I fail forward. And it's not like, oh crap, like someone did this and it devastated my life. You're in control basically of your.
Yeah. Like, and we're in control of the capacity of our work as well. Like I always think of your story with Pepsi or whatever, not to put Pepsi on blast, but we've already done it a few times on this podcast where they told you had to make do a million of those
Pepsi versus Coke taste challenges.
And he was just like, that's impossible to do in the amount of time.
It's not possible.
Wait, what did they want you to do?
Because basically I worked for an ad agency and our project was the Pepsi versus Coke taste challenge. You might have heard of it, where you taste it blind and see which one it is or whatever. And so I started the agency and they say, hey, Anthony, here's the brief for the project. You're going to be managing this Pepsi taste challenge. I'm like, wow, this is exciting. I read the brief. It says 1 million tastes.
A million?
Yeah, 1 million. Like you're going to taste it and go, Coke. 1 million of those.
That's a lot. Okay.
In like 4 months or something.
Oh.
And it's like there's like 100 employees. It's big. At first I go, okay, maybe that's possible. But you sit down and start going, so that's this number per week and this number per day.
This number per hour.
And this number per person per hour.
How many did it come out to?
It's something like 180 per person per hour, which is like
it's like who's making
it's impossible to move at that rate. And you have to find people. There are morning shifts that are slow. There are evening shifts that are slow. So it's like, I remember going, guys, we're on the Titanic.
Yeah.
Like, this is the Titanic. This is not going to happen. And then literally they were like, shh.
Yeah, we're just going to pretend it can happen.
Really?
Let's not talk about it.
It's a secret.
Later on, everybody in that department was fired but me.
No.
Yeah, because I was the only one who was waving the flag from day one.
So my point for bringing that up is if you own your own company and you get in a contract and they want it in 2 days and you're like, well, I know we can't do this within 2 days. So. It's like we can say, hey, can't do that in 2 days.
Yeah.
I love that. And it also, I feel like it sets, at least for me, it sets me up for being a healthier person.
Of course it does. Happier.
Worker, because I'm not trying to like fit and rush into something creative. To be a creative person, like I have to learn it's my off time is just as important as the time I'm working. Of course it is. And you don't get that when you're working for like an agency.
And you're not going to be able to work as well if you don't take the off seriously.
Off time, because I used to work for an agency too. They'd be like, hey, I need this in 2 hours. And I didn't have the freedom to say no.
That's the agency world. Unfortunately for them and fortunately for us, and I think for a lot of people like us, and I think this works for a lot of entrepreneurs, and this is really useful because if you're listening and you're not an entrepreneur, this is where the world's going. So you, your friends, and or your children are going to be in this situation in the future.
Start a lemonade stand now.
And the thing with entrepreneurship and the real beauty, this is what I love about it, is even if the salary if we only just matched what our salaries were when you have a day job, you do that and you can wake up in the morning and think, what do I want to do today?
Oh, it's crazy.
And it has so much magic. People, it's hard to recognize the power of that. Before I quit my job, and I apologize if this sounds elitist to somebody who can't, because I know sometimes people have kids. I know you have debt, and it's not possible. So, but it's nonetheless worth discussing the idea of before I quit my job, I was smart enough to understand that I was trading my time, and that wasn't the best way to go about it. I knew all those things, but after I quit it, I didn't realize the extent to which you are literally just selling your life to someone you never met.
Yeah.
And it's so trippy to me.
I mean, that's a good way of putting it.
It's like there's a guy you don't know, or maybe you met 4 times. It's like the CEO of this company.
And he owns you, basically.
And if you don't show up a couple days in a row, you're not going to be able to eat after that. And that's just like, it's very strange.
You're putting yourself in someone else's hands, and it feels very strange.
It's tough.
So I got to this point, like, you can, do we need, like, is it okay if I keep talking about this?
No, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know, she's the taskmaster on,
I am
the podcast.
The taskmaster.
She needs to like buzzer us. So I got to a point, it was probably like 3 years ago, I've always been doing music, always been building it. And I I was touring a lot of colleges, doing a lot of stuff like that, and then also working full-time job. And I realized, you know what, like this is not sustainable. I'm running out of energy. I can't keep doing this. And I took a notepad out and I literally wrote all the things that made me feel like I was stuck in my life. Funding for music, felt like I didn't have enough funding for it. Felt like I was locked into a 9-to-5 job, so I had to ask permission if I wanted to go on tour, and if I didn't have time off, I couldn't leave. And so I wrote down, and it was a pretty big list, and I was like, okay, what do I have to do to completely rearrange this so that I'm free of all these things that I feel like I'm. And I would say like it took me a good 2 years, but that whole thing of like setting that intention of like, so I looked at it, I was like, okay, well, as a musician, I can run a lot faster if I'm rent free. And so like, that's where I got the idea of like getting my house, Airbnb it to cover my mortgage. And like, that's not something I would have thought about otherwise. So if people who are listening, I would definitely say, if you feel like you're stuck, you should definitely write it out and then think of weird out of the box solutions that you can do. So I did that in like every area. I mean, really though. And then that's what ends up like, then 2 years down the road, you look back and you're like, oh, I freed myself from all this stuff.
And I think that's important to never act like for us, it came overnight, because even when I quit my job, I worked there part-time for a little bit, like very like casual. I wouldn't even say part-time, but like they would call me every few weeks and be like, hey, can you come in? And I was like, you know what? Like we need the money. So I'm going to go in. Yeah. I would still work there. And then I also did promo jobs for a bit. So I would do like promos for like a new movie that's coming out. And so I'd dress up as a character from the movie and like take pictures of people in the street. And it was always fun stuff that was kind of like relevant with like the type of stuff that I want to do. But it's like, I still had to do that for probably about the same as you for like 2 years. And now we're on our third year and I don't have time to do that stuff because we're so busy with our company. So it's like, it really did pay off. And but it did take time. So I think anybody who's kind of considering this route, just realize that it does take time. It doesn't happen overnight.
And like when people meet you, they're like, oh, it's so cool that you work remotely and you travel all the time. And I feel like we all kind of have that similar situation, which is awesome. But I feel like choices had to be made, and some like, you know, it took a while. It doesn't happen overnight for sure. I'm really convinced that even the things that you think happen overnight don't.
It's a million decisions, right? And then the next step is, I mean, if you decide you want to travel, or if you decide that you're just trying to live in any kind of unconventional way, you have to, in a similar way, because in a similar way that you said you broke down your life and was like, well, how do I free myself? That's how we travel, is we've set things up to be
reverse engineering.
Reverse engineering.
To be aerodynamically like created to travel. So, you have to go to a place where you're like looking into the future, because this sounds like it's, sometimes I worry that I'm just talking about something so specific to me, but then I go, who does not want to see more of the world? You know what I mean?
People say all the time that we're traveling. So they're like, I don't even understand how you guys can afford to travel so much. I get that a lot. It's just like, we're not millionaires. You know what I mean? It's just like we just
decisions.
You decide further in the future. You use resources like we've talked a million times, like apps like Hopper to watch flight costs. Like it's just like this. Honestly, it's like, everybody wants to travel more. Everybody wants more of the time for themselves. And yet I think very few people spend time
thinking about how to make it happen.
And becoming good at that. Like becoming good at traveling inexpensively has made our life so much better. Because it's a skill I picked up. I learned how to find cheap Airbnbs, and I learned how to manipulate the airfare system to get paid the least amount of money. And again, that sounds specific, but I sort of like, if I was young,
it's available to everyone.
I would love someone to be like, you know, you could travel for the cost of like a part-time job, week's paycheck, and go to almost anywhere in the world.
You really can. Like there's flights out of New York to Paris, if you hit it at the right time, that are like $300 round trip.
We flew for 4 and change Canadian, which is basically 3
it's US.
It's
crazy. And here's the thing.
That's the middle of Europe.
I think it comes down to this, and we can totally get off of this now if we want to, but I think it comes down to your belief system. And I don't mean like religious belief system by any means, but that's kind of why I compared the two of you earlier. I've only known you for a short time, but I can already tell you guys both believe believe that you're fully in control of like designing the life you want. And I think that's a huge bond.
I think you nailed it. That's like, probably the main thing that links us.
Yeah.
That's like, very, very astute.
You're both like, okay, well, we craft the life we want. And obviously there are things out of your control. I get that. But the hard thing, and for me, you know, I'm single at the moment, but the hard thing for me in finding like a partner is finding someone who like has that belief system too. That's like, okay, I may be stuck right now, but I have the belief that I can take these steps and I can do X, Y, Z and craft the life I want. Because a lot of people, it's very hard. It's not easy. You have to kind of train your brain almost every single day. It's a
viewpoint of the world, isn't it? It's like almost the word I use sometimes is like it's our operating system. It's like it's like the way of which I view the world. Like we're talking about buying a house, and now I've said this a few times on the podcast, but we're already like we're gonna do some fucking weird stuff to that house because it's like that's how we do. Like, so we have a 3-bedroom apartment. One of those apartments looks like this. One of the rooms looks like this. So what are we gonna do when we have 12 rooms?
You're gonna do some really cool shit.
Really cool shit, and that's how we do our whole life.
And you almost it's like you're wireframing your life to like, but you have to kind of, especially as a team, you have to kind of both be into that. I met this really cool guy after he's probably in like late 40s, early 50s. He's worked with a lot of athletes, and he came up to me after a show. We were talking about the set, whatever. He really liked it. But what he does for a living is he kind of teaches you how to rewire frame your operating system of your brain so that the choices that you make are less based on maybe bad experiences or like limiting beliefs and more on, wait a second, what am I capable of?
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing is we also probably got the message like as kids a lot of like, oh, don't just be a dreamer. Don't just be a dreamer that never takes action. And I feel like
that was
right
our parents' generation too, right?
Yeah. Like we're not dreamers. We are visionaries that take action. I feel like, and that's the difference. You know?
You're right.
So
I think this is the thing. Whenever you talk about an entire generation, we are a generation of dreamers. Like the idea of the millennials being, like earlier you said, like we're more adaptable. We're also a generation where there are some divas in our, like that aspect to us exists as well, of this like kind of I'll say under 30, even though I'm in my 30s, but you know what I mean.
This
kind of
check
like
yourself,
30s and under. Like we have some of that where it's like we do like to be cozy and not have things too hard, but in our own way, the way things are evolving, I think is sort of what you mean, is that we're like willing to like evolve with things more quickly. Because I think that's it. We live in a world of, and I'm sort of connecting these two things of like evolution's happening really fast around us, and the key is being able to like ride that wave effectively and not let it freak you out too bad.
Well, and it's changing more rapidly than any other time, any other period of history.
Exactly.
Like. It's like if you
we're the adapters, right? That's kind of what we are.
We shouldn't be the millennials. We're really good at adapters.
Yeah, totally. Just to touch on that one more time, because it's something that I'm really interested in, is just like thinking that just because millennials want more comfort and more amenities it almost like for older people it almost means they're not as hardworking, but that's not true at all. Like I'm just giving an example, like, oh, they want some fancy frappuccino machine in the office. It's just like, yeah, it's delicious, and I'm here 40 hours a week.
Yeah, you're right.
You know what I mean? Why not? Why just have a water cooler? You know what I mean? Like it costs the company like a little amount and it makes their lives so much better, but I could see like an older person being like, oh, their fancy frappuccino office.
You know what the answer might even be? Our grandparents didn't know what frappuccinos were. Yeah. And if they did, they would have wanted it.
And I mean, that's a very specific example, but I've heard but there are other examples. Like similar things.
If someone told my grandpa that some places were giving people like the men time off when the babies were born, he wouldn't have been like, I don't want that. I think there's a reasonable chance he'd been like,
I want it.
Cool, I'm in.
He didn't get it.
That's, you know what I mean? It's like once we started opening it, of course, like who wouldn't? Yeah, that's delicious. Yeah, that's amazing for my life to spend time with my baby. Oh yes, a reasonable like Fridays off. Like agency world, for example, agency is like the softer side of like employment.
Right.
You might know a little bit about that. It's like Fridays off because we want to drink beers. Yeah, that's softer, but it's also way more fun.
Well, and then also people are more productive. Like studies have shown people are more productive when they feel like they're in an environment where they can actually enjoy themselves. Like
totally.
Kind of going back to that, the 80-year-old guy I was talking about, that's actually where some of the stuff is just really cool, where some of the stuff we're talking about really truly stem from, because they started doing studies, like his team, his group started doing studies on, here are these people, they have everything, but companies are all about the bottom dollar. There's no joy in the workplace. There's no joy. There's no happiness. So a lot of the stuff that we talk about now are like the Google companies of the world that have, like the slide and like, ping pong, that kind of stuff. Cream. Ice cream on Wednesdays. Like that's the kind of stuff that honestly came out of, it was really neat to be in the room with this man and like be sitting across from someone who was a precursor for all the stuff we're talking about. Like, so he kind of helped start paving the way for that, because he was a psychologist and he was like, look at these studies. You can give people a paycheck. At the end of the day, money is cool, but like they might want a frappuccino.
That's not how you unlock their genius necessarily. It's just by paying their bills.
Right. You want to unlock their genius by making them feel like, okay, I'm coming to an experience every day. Like,
because you said studies. I don't read studies, but I've read the like one graph sheet or whatever on Twitter that says something like people only work like 22% of the time they're being paid for. Like the other rest of the time they're looking busy or they're making conversation or whatever, they're on the toilet. But it's like a very short period of time they're actually doing the thing at full speed that they're supposed to be doing. Yeah. So if you know that it's 22%, if you can get that number to 50%, by making the other time pleasant, like, you know what I mean? The other 50% pleasant by having work activities, and then you've just doubled the output of every other company. And you're only at 50. So one would argue, from someplace like Google, you maybe get them to 70% of the time they're working at full speed, because you have Friday parties and these things where they're like, man, I do not want to
then they're working harder when they're actually working.
You know what I mean? Like, wow, I really fuck with my boss. So when he says, guys, I really need someone to come up with a creative solution, I want to be the guy to deliver that creative solution, because he's a badass motherfucker. He's not the guy who's always up my ass.
He gives us ice cream.
But like ice cream sounds soft. Soft serve. But
I really want ice cream.
That dude's brother, who's still back in Pittsburgh, does not get that.
Right.
So he's seeing real world examples all the time. So it's really easy to be like, well, it's just ice cream, so how much is that really going to inspire you? He's surrounded by examples of people who get screamed at by their boss,
literally
instead of their boss saying, oh, so tell me about this. I heard you've been playing guitar on the side. Do you want to play it at our thing on Friday? Which is such like a Silicon Valley thing to say. Yeah, it's like, no, that guy's going to work with you for life.
Probably the worst boss I ever had in my life, you guys. It was a very short period of my time. I've done what I needed to do to keep music going, and I feel like that's kind of the theme of Rebecca's life. Of like, what did she need to do to keep that going? Yeah. So for a very short period of time, I worked at a copy selling company, like selling copiers.
Oh, amazing!
And I literally had my boss, who is this very just miserable man. He hated his life, and so he took it out on other people. But
as they do,
he sat down and he was like, I need you to think inside the box. No more. This is a real conversation. He was like, if you think outside the box one more time in this job, you're fired.
That's not something you people usually use negatively.
Isn't that the theme of like Moana or whatever? Yeah. Or it's like,
also, he told me in the same conversation, it happened to be my birthday. And he was like, I don't care that it's your birthday. This is the real fucking world. No one cares about birthdays in the real fucking world.
Oh my God.
Was he played by Steve Carell?
I mean, he could have been.
Oh no, Steve Carell's not that mean.
No, but he would play like character acting.
He'd be more like Danny DeVito, like in the 90s.
Oh my gosh, you guys, like, and here's the thing,
I'm big, you're small, I'm smart, you're dumb.
That's exactly and he literally was like, Rebecca, if you think creatively in this job one more time, you're fired.
I love this dude.
I was like, the old me.
What's his name?
I can't even remember his name. I try to block it out of my Ron. His name was Ron.
Of course.
And he was like, miserable human being. Talked about how he never got laid by his wife, and I think that's like the heart of the problem, But anyway,
that bitch had to spend all the time with him.
Yeah,
I mean, honestly. But so here's the deal: my old Rebecca would have looked at that and been like, "Oh my gosh, like I'm gonna lose my job." But the new Rebecca went on a vacation and was like, "I'm gonna look for something different." And I was like, "I'm not gonna put myself in that position anymore." Yeah. And I think that's the thing, is we're realizing, like, you choose the position you put yourself in.
Yeah, you choose what you want to do with those 40 hours a week.
Yeah. My boss threw a stapler at me.
Oh, that's violent. So it didn't hit your face.
No, it didn't hit me.
That's
hit the wall.
Violent.
Yeah, he had a problem.
We should have a podcast episode of like violent things bosses have done. Mine threw a chair once. What about you, Jess?
Any violent boss stories for you, Jess?
I've never had
What's your worst boss story?
My worst boss story is...
Oh, you have a pretty good one from, the one... There's a good one you've told me for years now. in the makeup department or something like that?
Yeah, so there was a really shitty, I'll say his fucking name. There was Lou from the fucking Shoppers Drug Mart at Welland. He was the associate, so that means that's like the head pharmacist who kind of like owns the Shoppers Drug Mart, which is, do you guys have Shoppers Drug Mart? It's like
it's like a Walgreens.
Yeah, same
very
kind of
much
thing.
so.
He was just like gross, and he would just like rate women as they walked in the door from like 1 to 10. He would be like, yeah, he would do
like, I'm
shit
gonna
like
rate you as a 1.
Yeah.
Gross.
And then he was also screwing one of the cosmeticians that I worked with, and they got into a fight, and he fired her, or she left or something, and so then I got all of her hours, of course, because I was under her or whatever. So then I stepped up and got all of her hours.
He was under her.
I was working full time, and then they made up, I guess, and
you lost all your hours?
He fired me.
No,
yeah, he fired me, and he acted like it was for other reasons.
Of course
and stuff.
He did. Of course he did.
But to be honest, it's like the best thing that ever happened to me because I moved on to better things.
You know what? Like, for a second, just to say, I think I also something I thought was cliche until I'm only recently realizing that it is actually true. A lot of times, the things that happen that you really think are bad actually end up being the best thing that ever happened.
Oh, totally.
How many things? Even like when I got my divorce and I was devastated, it was terrible, and I never want to go through that again. It honestly, in a lot of ways, was probably one of the best things that could have happened to me. Like I know all about this. I think it's one of those cliches that actually ends up being true. Like, what if you were still at that makeup counter working?
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
We won't get into the entire story. It's an old one around here, but one of the worst things that ever happened in my life, in our life, is what led to us buying the domain for lyricvids.com. And now that's all we've done for a living ever since.
It's crazy.
So it's like one of the worst things that ever happened to us led to literally the best thing that ever happened to us. So I don't really believe in karma and energy and these things. Like, I think in terms of like the way that they're generally talked about, but there's no denying
there's something to
when something like that happens where you're like, wow, like that. It almost felt like an energy transference of like, how could something so bad just like go through this weird filter of
and
like
more realistically, it was that you kept your head down and never stopped working, and you pivoted.
What it is.
You were able to pivot and be like, okay, that's not working now, so let's do this.
I kind of feel like that's
but
the
in this
theme
case,
of this podcast.
it was so bad to so good.
Yeah.
It's mesmerizing. If whether it's based on something or not, and you're right, I probably would bet that it's not based on an actual energy transference or karma or anything. It's still mesmerizing to reflect on, where you're like, I almost didn't have this amazing thing in my life, and the reason I have it is something I never want to go through again.
Literally,
you know what I mean?
That's actually a really good way of putting it.
So it's really
you're like, I definitely don't want to do that again. I don't want to go through that again. But however, it's a good thing I did because
I have all this amazing stuff in my life right now.
Yeah, I mean, I do think like putting your head down and keep working is the one thing. And then if you're, like we were saying earlier, authentic in the moment when those kind of earth-shattering things are happening,
and that's what we did.
You end up being closer to where you want to go because you lose everything you thought you had, and then you're like, okay, well, where am I going to do this next?
Yeah, for sure. So we're probably nearing the end. I got a couple more things I want to talk about.
Yeah, okay.
So this is a complete pivot, but as recording artists and people who have done concerts, been to lots of concerts, lots of recording, lots of headphones, do you guys feel like it's negatively affected your hearing?
Well, that's a very random question.
Ooh, that's a good question, though.
Actually, that is a good question.
I think the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel it.
What was the question? I didn't hear you. That was good.
Mom joke.
Do you feel like it has you?
Well, I don't feel it, but it must have.
Yeah.
So Anthony has loud talkiness, which I'm not sure.
I've had that my whole life.
He's like,
I'm not sure if it's from his confidence,
a little bit ADD.
His excitement.
Yeah, it's a little bit ADD, a little bit confidence, but it's mostly just like I'm excited. It's mostly I'm excited.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's usually when you're excited, you walk into the room and you're like, "Hey, Jess, I heard about it," and I'm like, "Shh, I'm right here." But I always thought that maybe it had something to do with not being able to hear properly.
Increasingly be that, but
so that brings me to: do you guys remember this came out? This is probably not new news to anyone listening. But a few years ago, that really high-pitched sound that only kids can hear.
Wait, what? I don't think I heard this.
I'm so glad you haven't, because that makes it so much more interesting.
Okay.
So basically, there's a really high-pitched sound that teenagers were using as ringtones, apparently, because their parents couldn't hear it.
Shut up. I did not.
So it's
how
just
did
like
I
a
miss
high,
this?
like, ee! And apparently, the older you get, the more certain parts of your hearing is damaged.
I want to know if I can hear this.
Yeah.
Are we going to do this?
It's coming. It's coming.
Okay.
So as you get older, certain parts of your hearing is damaged, so you can't hear certain notes, which are usually the really high pitched notes. So I need you guys to watch the screen because it's going to do a few different ones.
Okay.
Just as a gauge for me, I can only hear the first one.
Oh,
so
shit.
let's see.
This is the real thing to see what music has done to us. I thought I had good ears. Ooh. Yep.
Yes, I can hear that.
Definitely hear that.
So first one, watch the numbers.
I
can hear it.
Dogs can hear this.
Yeah.
Yes. Can you guys still hear it?
I can't hear it. No. After that one,
I can still hear this.
Yeah.
I almost feel like I can feel it, but I can't hear
Ooh,
it.
definitely hear that. Ooh,
Okay, so your hearing's great.
I can't hear anything now.
can't hear that.
Okay.
What happened to that?
I heard
Could I hear that when I was a kid?
Yeah.
I can hear that.
Yeah.
And now if you're 30, you can hear this.
Yeah. So you could hear everyone except the last one. So that's
Everyone
pretty
except the
good.
last one.
Yeah,
But-
I heard the first two, and then I almost feel like I
think
could
I heard the
feel
first
the
two.
other ones.
You could
because it's
feel-
so high that you almost feel like a vibration in your ear. Do you know what I mean?
Got that good. Yeah, every time I go to a show though, I'm almost like religious about putting earplugs in my ear.
Oh, smart.
Oh, okay.
It's like one things you can't gain back. Like eyesight, you can always you can do laser, surgery on your eyes. Like pretty much everything in your body,
Yeah.
you can rejuvenate except for your ears. It's
Yeah.
the one thing that does not rejuvenate itself. So
They got the vagina worked out, but not the ears.
yeah.
you can always
They really need to work on that ear rejuvenation surgery.
You can tighten anything.
Not your eardrums. Or I don't even know if that's how that works.
Oh man, that's interesting. I kind of want you to text me to that. Or text that to me. I'm going to text it to my family.
Yeah,
and
for
see.
sure.
It's crazy.
Don't ever
Use
say
it
that.
as
Don't
your
ever play that for
ringtone.
me again.
No, you didn't like that?
I don't like that at all.
Oh, so that means you could probably.
surprised-
Oh
I'm
no,
surprised your dog didn't like-
Anthony's having some jaw issues.
What?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was not
Everyone at
pleasant.
home is like, thanks for that joke. That was great.
So we talked a little bit about reality TV and The Bachelorette and stuff on our last podcast.
Yeah, we did.
What I would like to ask you guys is, as D-list celebrities that you are,
Maybe like E.
Barely. I'm
Maybe
like,
like E.
oh, you're bringing it down. Okay. Would you guys ever do reality TV
again?
again? Yeah, but so explain to her what you did.
Well, I'm Canada's smartest person. Okay.
Oh, okay.
You don't have to get majorly into it because we've already talked about it
Okay,
many
what
times.
is it?
I want a TV show called Canada's
It
Smartest
was a
Person.
game show, which isn't quite
It's like
what
Who
I
Wants
mean.
to Be a Millionaire type of
Yeah,
situation,
exactly.
and you answer all the questions right.
Exactly.
Did you win lots of money?
No money. It's Canada.
It's just clout.
It's Canada.
I won 500. I won $500, but it was on
I
TV.
have to learn about these
but it was on
Canadian
TV.
ways.
Yeah.
Anyways, but it's not really reality TV, but it was kind of reality TV. Like they followed me and did a bio piece on me. And
Right, like on a American Idol.
Totally.
Right, where they want to tell you a sob story. Well, I have a funny story on that. So I was auditioning for one of those singing shows. I want to say it was America's Got Talent, maybe so a different one. But I had an interview with the producers because they have a lot of rounds before. No, it was a new one called the Final Four. Okay. So my friend was on it. I was almost on it. And I'm really glad I wasn't, honestly. But they had to call me and they had they wanted that sob backstory.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So he was like, I want to know, tell me.
There's someone who died.
Yeah, no, really. So I'm on the phone with this guy and I'm talking to him. I've never met him before. He's like, tell me about the saddest thing that ever happened in your life. And I was like,
wow.
well, and I
the
kind of
saddest thing that ever happened in your life.
So I was like, well, I went through a divorce. It was very terrible. Yeah, honey, everyone's gotten divorced. Anything else? And he's like,
Next.
literally, he was like, any dead parents, any dead relatives, recently, did anybody die?
He was getting straight to the point. He's like, look, I have 200 more people to call today.
If you're willing to
Give me
kill
the
somebody
give me the
while I'm on
water.
the phone, that would technically qualify.
He's like, do you have any missing limbs? What do you got for me? And I was like,
Is there a large
my
knife
grandma
nearby?
passed away. I was like, my grandma passed away. He's like, yeah, honey, everyone has grandparents that pass away. Anything else? And I was like, no. I mean, he was abrasive about it.
Yeah.
Then he was like, so what do you love to do in your spare time? And I was like, well, I love yoga. And he goes, oh my gosh, basic bitch. Anything else? And I was like,
Amazing.
so basically, I don't think I'm a good fit for this. But yeah, I finished out the phone call. But that was the closest I got to reality TV.
Amazing.
That's
Wow.
to say,
So we know the answer from her is probably no. Then.
no, yeah. Well, no, I mean, I would do it if I was actually being reality. I
So
don't
what
think I could
about
do,
where you have to stay in Big Brother or whatever, where you have to stay in
I'd
a house
love
with a bunch
that.
of people?
I mean,
how long is it? Is it 4 months? Or
No, it's
something?
usually I don't know Big Brother, never watched that show, but a lot of the shows I've seen are a month.
A month.
I would do it. I mean, I would do it. I mean, why not? It was a good experience. I think I wouldn't. The only time I would have a hard time with reality TV is when they're telling me again to be let me exploit your pain that you've been through in your life for TV show rankings. Like, I don't think I could do that. You know?
Have I ever told the story about the cooking show that I
don't know. Tell it.
Okay. So when me and Anthony were first dating, I was asked to be, I guess, contestant on this show called Chef in Your Ear, which is gross because it sounds like they got their dick in your ear or something. But basically what it was is you put on like a little hearing thing, like a little...
And it teaches you.
And there's a famous chef on the other side of it. And you're supposed to be people who are bad at cooking. So I was like, I signed up for it. And I was like, I'm a really terrible cook. I just know how to make hot dogs, whatever. And they interviewed me and all that stuff about how terrible I was. It was supposed to be funny.
That's cool.
And then they give me the little earpiece, and there's a famous Toronto chef in the back being like, okay, so you're in a kitchen right now. What do you see? And I'll be like, there's a green thing. He's like, well, what kind of green thing? I'm like, I don't know. It's like kind of looks like broccoli, but it's not. And then he'll be like, okay, I think that's whatever.
Oh, and he had blind.
And he had to cook
blind.
through me blind. So the concept of the show was very cool.
Yeah.
However, the episode that I did was live fish, live lobster that I had to kill.
No.
And
did you kill the live lobster?
I did, and it was very upsetting. I like slowly killed it because I'm not strong enough to like kill it.
She slowly killed it because she's fucked up like that.
Yeah, no.
So
it was
damaging.
I had to like skin the fish and like
Are you okay? Like
no, I remember I was like crying on the way out. I was just, and the funny part was it actually didn't air. It was a pilot that they were pitching to the Food Network. So when they got approved by the Food Network, they said, yeah, make the show. And so they called me back and they're like, hey, we want to actually make the episode.
We really
now
want you to be a part
with
of
better
it.
cameras, better lighting, better all
Did
that.
you say no?
I said no.
Really?
Yeah, I was just like, no, I had a really bad experience, but thanks anyways.
I can't
And I also said, how much would you pay? And they said $300. And I said, not enough.
Wait, are you serious? That's it? That's the other thing that's kind of crazy to me is like on an American Idol or whatever, like the judges get paid millions. And then the person who wins gets like $1 million record deal, but really like they're not seeing any. I mean, if for people who are listening who know how record deals work, like you don't necessarily see any of that money as a paycheck coming in that you get to spend.
Yeah.
So like, it's just kind of funny to me that like, hey, $300 for being on something that's
killing live animals.
That new show, it's like The Song or whatever.
Oh, I was almost on that. So the first version of it.
There's some tricky stuff with the
songwriting issues. So they tried to do this show. It's the same producers. They tried to do this show about 8 years ago. And me and my friend Trista Mabry, we went down to Sony in Nashville and we like auditioned with the judges. And then, it was me and my friend Trista Mabry and then my friend Tyrone, who he now plays for Sam Hunt. He's one of my good friends, but like he all three of us. But even at that time we were like, we don't know about this because we auditioned for it and they at the time I don't even think they had like what the contract or the deal was or anything, and then they sent it to us and it was real shady because you have to, you guys, for who's listening to, it's like a songwriting reality TV show.
You basically bring them your best song and then they compete with you and the song kind of thing.
But then they own the rights
and they basically own the song forever and then you waive all songwriting royalties.
So
way beyond what would actually be necessary.
Why would you waive royalties?
So
they can own it without you waiving your royalties.
No, they could own the master and you still get your songwriting royalties.
Or they could work out a deal with you like a normal publishing company, but instead they're like, oh, F you just gave us this hit song and you got to be on TV for exposure, so we're going to take your whole song. So they tabled the whole thing. This was like 8 years ago. They tabled the whole thing. And then they came back
taking
and did
the song because there could, if all of a sudden you like change the rules or something, that would ruin their show because they all of a sudden wouldn't own the rights to that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I understand them wanting to own the rights to the song completely, but it's like, why take away your royalties? You wrote it.
Or like with other
that should be illegal.
With other sync licensing, you can sign contracts that say that they have the right to use the song now and forever in any way they want. But you're still getting like the percentage.
You still get paid.
Yeah.
So it was super shady. So now like they came out with it again, and I guess they worked their legal issues out like 8 years later. But I would never do a show like that. I don't think I would. I mean, I get it, exposure, but that's honestly one of the reasons why I left Nashville too, is because Nashville has this whole thing of like, well, we're giving you exposure, so you give us stuff for free, which I get you have
Everywhere
to do a little
has
bit. Well, it's better in New York. At least they pay artists to like play. But in Nashville, I think I was telling you this, like I would go in the whole $300, $400 every time I do a show because they're like, well, it's exposure. But meanwhile, we're building, like musicians are the backbone of a multi-million-dollar tourist industry in Nashville. People come to see the live music in Nashville. Yeah. So people are playing in these bars for free. Tourists are coming in. We're feeding this whole like tourism community. And then people get nothing in return. And I was just like sick of it.
To me, it's two separate questions. Like when they say, it's exposure. It's like, so I understand why an artist would want the exposure. Like that makes sense.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with an artist being willing to play a show for free for the exposure.
Right.
My question is, if you are making money hand over fist
at the bar,
and or if you're the TV show on the TV advertising or however TV is,
why not be fair?
Why would you want
to not
all artists to do it just for free? It's like
if you
I have a lot of it's more questions about that. Why would you want that to be the case?
Like if you came to me and said, hey Rebecca, I'm putting on this nonprofit festival, would you like to donate your time and play for it? I would say absolutely.
Totally different.
Totally different. But you make a really good point, because like at these bars that I'm talking about, the bartenders would walk away with $700 a night.
Yeah, and that's the thing, you don't even have to pay musicians a ton.
No, we don't.
Just make them so that they don't have to spend money.
And these are bars people
would
would
not
not
lowest paid.
Entertaining your guests.
And the comedians, they can be the lowest paid, but they should still be paid.
Because the thing is, like, people come to that bar to see the comedian. They come to the bar to see the music. If it wasn't there, people wouldn't go to that bar. They would go to a different bar.
There is a devil's advocate, because I believe Airtight unequivocally, I can't say that word. Pay them. But in Nashville for music, in LA for comedy, there is a lineup of other artists and musicians to play in that spot. So it's not just that if you don't go, they won't have anyone there. There is a lineup of other people to play.
And that is the problem.
But again, going back to the point, why not agree that whoever's in that spot is going to make this like $200 fee.
Yeah. But you could really say that about anything too. You could be like, at this McDonald's job, there's plenty of other people who are looking for a job.
I agree.
And you know what I mean? But it's just like, you still have to pay them a minimum.
That's why I'm really getting on like a soapbox now. That's why, like I always say, there are like checks and balances in almost every single industry. In like the textile industry, you used to do like costuming and stuff. But back in like, what was it, the 20s, 30s, there was like laws that were passed. And I know every country is different, but like things to protect workers. And there's technically like a musicians union in the US, but no one really follows it.
We have it too, and it's not really meaningful.
And it's so honestly, I'm not trying to like be crass here, but I feel like the porn industry is probably more protected and like
in these ways, and
other ways not. But like I can't think of another industry where it's like, I'm going to continuously give you this thing for free for your pleasure and enjoyment with no expectation of much in return. Like I can't. I mean, can you think of like I'll spend $10 on a Happy Meal at McDonald's, but I don't want to pay for your music.
Yeah, and I think you're approaching a second issue, which is the value gap on music itself, because people don't want to pay for the music itself, which I think is a separate issue than entertainment companies and venue companies. In here in Toronto, those venue companies are largely more and more being owned by a single guy, or a single company owns like 16 or 25 bars. It happens more and more, where it's a tough business to be in. So the guy who's making billions owning these 14 can kind of stack his expenses and just buy the 15th spot too. So that's not everywhere. There's still a lot of single owned spots, but more and more. So that those people taking advantage feels Airtight, open and closed book. Like, we should just be a regulation that if you're selling alcohol at the bar, you pay them a minimum of this for a performance. Or if you don't think that, if that's too much for the amount of alcohol you sell, then it defaults to a percentage of the bar sale.
Exactly. So
it's
just default. So let's say it's $200.
Oh, that's too much?
It caps at $200. So even if the bar gets crazy, they make all that money, and yours caps at $200, let's say. But if 10 people show up because you didn't promote yourself at all, you would only get a percentage of the bar, which maybe ends up to be $125 or something like that. Not even.
It would be like $40. Be like, well, that one didn't go well, but you still got a percentage of the bar or whatever.
And I don't know where that, like, how to draw the line there, or when it won't change overnight, but it definitely won't change by artists just being like, yeah, I'm cool with that. And like, I think, as an artist, as I grow, it's something that I am really passionate about. Like, I'm definitely willing to play those shows for free, put myself in the position. But what I'm not willing to do anymore is be a slave for my own music, in the sense that I am being treated not like anyone else would be. Like, if I'm offering you a service and I'm giving you like this wonderful experience, if it's for a charity, yes, awesome, amazing. If it's for your backyard concert, cool. If it's for a friend or a favorite, awesome. But if it's for a bar that's making thousands of dollars off of what I'm giving you,
and that bar doesn't actually care about the art form. They're only bringing you there as part of the value proposition to sell beers.
And that's why I enjoy playing in New York, because I have to say, like, for the bars that I play with in New York, like, they pay us.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Like, I make what a bartender.
And there's so many different ways that you could make it fair and not, as the bar owner, not lose that much money.
No.
For example, let's say there's a part of the bar that's right in the music area. Like there's like 10 tables. It's like maybe you just get percentage off those tables and you don't get it for the full restaurant area that can barely hear your music.
Sure,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
I'm just giving an example. Like there's so many ways that you could make it fair and that it would give the artist a little bit of money and it would
using about
break
this for
your
90
bank.
seconds. Imagine somebody who actually does this.
And that's the shitty part is it's not like they haven't thought of these things. You know what I mean? It's just they don't want to, which is really a slap in the face.
And there's lobbyists for industries that try to keep things how they are.
And I'm not sure. So, okay, last thing I'll say on this, and I'll soapbox over, but there's a big festival that happens in the middle of the summer in Nashville in June. It's like the CMA Fest, and it's hot. It's always really, 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 really hot. Like we're talking 90s degrees outside, sunny, sunny, sunny. It's like never not been like blistering. Yeah. Well, artists, like this is a CMA Fest, so all the big country artists come in and play, and then the bars are filled with people, you know, like us that want the opportunity to play. So usually they don't pay you for those, which is fine. Not really fine, but because there's thousands and thousands of tourists coming in, like racking up hundreds of dollars worth of bills. Like they're making tons of money off these artists and no one's making a penny. But whatever, you get exposure. So then a couple years ago, there was a thing that was floating around. They were charging artists for bottles of water during these hot performances where it's like there's barely any air coming through. And there was a sign,
that much money they're making on that.
Musicians must pay for water. So they're already playing for free. In some of these bars, they're paying to play. Yeah. And they weren't even giving them water.
Yeah, that's insane.
It was like, keep in mind, there would be no one at these bars if there wasn't live music.
Yeah.
So to me, that's actually when people ask me, like, why did you leave Nashville? That's honestly one of the biggest reasons. I'm like, I've grown past it. I've grown past that bullshit.
One of the biggest reasons I don't tour is it gives me an ulcer. Even talking to you about it gives me an ulcer. Describing having to deal with a venue manager in some place you've never been before, because some of them are great, and you can never say any group of people are all bad. That's not the point. But there are a lot of people who get into owning a venue just because they played bass in the band once, or you know what I mean, like they just like,
or they had a hand,
or they were a bartender somewhere, and they're like, well, next step is I'll buy a spot, and like that doesn't always make you great at interpersonal stuff. And I've had some soul crushing experiences with venue managers, and it's the same type of like, I hold all the cards, you hold none of them, you aren't anything. I know you're chasing a dream, so that's
so I can take
corny, and B, I can take advantage of you. So it's like and like in my case, I'd literally been laughed at. But even in cases where I wasn't laughed at, I remember a venue manager told my guys who I booked a show, you know what, this isn't like a real event, so we just decided to, and it's just like, guys, what? That's so insulting.
You know, you're not like a real manager.
They hold all the cards. It's so insulting. It's just like, of course you can do that because we have no legal recourse. We can't sue you for closing I'm out $400, but I can't do anything about that.
Yeah.
And you didn't even need to be insulting. You could have been like, oh, we fucked up. Sorry, guys. But it's just like, they like,
it's almost a
they
power
burn
trip.
You and then piss on you.
It's like the parking,
damn.
like the parking attendants. They always have like this like power trip. Have you ever noticed that? Like parking attendants?
Me, it's bouncers. Me and bouncers don't get along great.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about you? Like when you start to do more and more, like as you've been building up your comedy stuff, like what will you yes and no to? Like, will you be like, yeah, to some extent I'll do this because the comedy world is probably a lot the same,
you're free
right?
for a while,
yeah, I'm going to be free for a while. I got paid at one show, $5.
I'm not saying you don't deserve to get paid. I just mean you're at that point.
Well, and then you understand like that's part of the cultivation of it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. The one show, I shouldn't put it on blast because I'm so thankful that I was booked on it. Okay. Maybe I won't say it.
Just say it as an example.
You know what? I'm going to say it because I don't think it was the booker's fault, and he was a super nice guy. It was maybe. Anyways, I'll just say. Yeah. So I did a show where I ate hot wings and then tried to do 5 minutes of comedy. So I've talked about it on the podcast
really
before, so I won't. But they're like suicide, like burn your mouth or whatever. And it was sponsored by a specific hot sauce company, and I thought at least they would give us like a free bottle of the hot sauce or something like that. And I brought guests too. Every one of us brought lots of guests because they wanted to see us in all this pain.
Cool off your mouth, or like
and you know what? They did treat us good in that sense.
Oh, okay.
They had bananas in the back. They had milk.
Okay.
They had like different things like that. So that they treated us good as far as like our mouths burning. But we didn't get any free drinks at the bar. We didn't get any free hot sauce and no payment, obviously. And this was like a legit comedy club. This isn't just an open mic. Like this was a booked show
with tickets, people paying
people paying at the door.
I don't love. If it's a free thing, it's fine. People are
like
paying
I said,
money.
if anyone listens to this, I was extremely thankful to be booked there. And I won't even say the comedy club or anything, but I was extremely thankful. Thank you to the club. Thank you to the promoter. But I would think that would be one that they would be like, oh, okay, well, let's see what the door made. Let's at least give them like $30 to cover the drinks that they bought while their mouths were burning. Do you know what I mean?
Or like, here's free tickets to the next show. Like, or, like bring a friend
giving comics free tickets
I guess
could be a bit insulting, but
but
I love the idea of the hot sauce even as like a thank you.
I just thought that might have been the case. Like I wasn't promised anything, so I wasn't expecting anything. But
it's nice.
But I was like, maybe they'll, because they were selling the sauce at the door to the guests and stuff, and I was like, oh, maybe they'll give the performing artists
free drinks
because we were promoting their product too, right?
Yeah.
So
the other thing, like some of my friends have actually like become kind of like accidental alcoholics because the only payment that they've gotten at shows is free alcohol.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, it's here and it's free and it's the payment thing. And so, I mean, it was fun while it lasted, but like a couple of my buddies are like really having to change their lives around because like they woke up one day 5 years later and like, well, shit, we've been drinking our only only payment,
Go home and look at your landlord. You're like, listen, man, can I buy you a couple beers?
I mean, it's great. Like, hey, free whiskey is great. I'll be the first to drink free whiskey, but
free whiskey. He's been in jail for 10
That's a whole other podcast. We could talk about accidental alcoholism forever.
If people do want to support you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Support me as a human.
Yeah, I mean, like they're listening to you. I mean,
like not mail you checks.
I imagine the best way is your art form, right?
Yeah,
so maybe go listen or
listen. The biggest thing I'm working on right now is building up my Spotify. So I have music on there, Rebecca Moreland, like I want more land, and it's I've got several songs up there now that are kind of more the direction I'm going in, of more pop direction, and then the next year, so I'm going to be releasing a acoustic album live, like a completely live acoustic stripped back.
Oh, nice.
Same songs. I'm going to use the same pop songs that I'm doing, but just kind of do like a live because I'm all about like let's do it big and epic, and then let's have that real and raw.
Yeah,
and
show them both.
That's kind of like what I really want to do.
So follow her on Spotify, Rebecca Moreland.
Yeah, and then I'm on Instagram and Facebook. I'm really trying in the next couple months too to do more like live videos, and so you guys can find like cover songs, things that I like to sing on a regular basis. I'll be doing more videos.
I love that.
Yeah.
Go see Rebecca in New York randomly and follow you on socials for information.
Yeah, if you're traveling to New York, message me. Yeah.
Hey, I figure our listeners are largely in Canada and US, and some of those people got to be in the New York area. That's where a lot of people live. So good to put that out there. And in general, check out your socials for wherever they might be able to see you or follow up or support an upcoming release. A big thing right now you can do to support people is like a pre-save. So if Rebecca's promoting a next single, hitting that pre-save button sends a really free, strong signal to the Spotify people and the Apple Music people that there are fans who care and that fuck with your energy. So that's a good thing to do. Do the same thing for me.
Yeah.
I got new music coming out all year round. My next one's called Can You Hear Me? It's like a Calvin Harris-y dancey song I'm really excited about. And then there's a song with Meyer coming out after that. And a song with Dean Risco after that.
And do the same for me. I'll try to post more comedy videos on Instagram. I've been slacking a bit lately, but I do post those every so often. And I also post about any cool shows that I'm on.
She's hilarious, you guys. Like you only have to meet Jess for like a minute.
Rebecca was one of the first friends of ours to see me live. So.
Oh my goodness, it blew me away. Like you were hilarious.
Thank you so much.
Right up there with the guy from where was he? What was he on?
He was on Conan.
Conan.
Yeah. So there was a guy on Conan who was better than me.
I mean,
Jess.
And then me.
And then there was
the crackhead.
And
then all the way down here at the bottom was Mr. I'll tell you if you eat shit.
Yeah.
Fuck you, buddy.
Gosh.
We talked about him last episode.
You win some, you lose some. That's what I said to him as he walked down the street away from the comedy club.
The one joke I keep thinking about from the guy who was on Conan though is remember how he's talking about how Amazon invented the store? That was hilarious.
Oh, yeah, that was funny.
Do you remember that?
It was funny.
He was like, that you got 2 day shipping and then you got 1 day shipping and now you get like Prime, you can just go pick it up, and the next step is like they invent the store and you can buy it there.
You
like
can look at it and buy it there. Yeah. That's
like
funny.
I love it.
So
well, that's been episode what, 35?
35.
Oh, nice.
35. Next one is I'm 36, so it'll be my champagne episode.
Champagne episode.
Yeah.
This was the coffee episode.
Yes.
We already blew through your champagne episode, I guess. We didn't even notice.
Yeah, that's okay.
Oh, well. Thanks so much for coming. Come on again what time you're in Toronto. And everybody, we love you. If you make it to the end, we love you the most. And we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Bye.